Welcome, everyone, to the Cryptographic Asset Show. We are more than honored to be sitting down with Rhett Ullman. He's an expert influencer marketer and NFT licenser. He's a CMO of Melt Music and co-founder of Blockperks. Thank you so much, Rhett, for joining us today.
Hey, Justin, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So you foresee a revolution in marketing made possible by crypto technology like NFTs. So before we get into that, though, can you tell us, like, at a very basic level, like what in the world an NFT even is?
Sure, yeah. So I absolutely think there's going to be a revolution in this space, and I think it's huge for marketing and advertising. But yeah, so the basics of an NFT is it's a non-fungible token, and basically that means that it's an asset that lives on the blockchain that has no other assets that are like it. So a fungible token would be one where everything is completely identical, which is like money, and then non-fungible are like these collectibles and like items. So in regards to advertising, it's going to be particularly advantageous to have these one-of-a-kind assets and to leverage them for your business. So I'm very bullish on the space.
What have we seen on the NFT front in 2021? What are some of the notable stories that you felt most passionate about, or which exemplified the most the potential for NFTs?
So I think there's a few different stories that really stand out. Most recently, I'd say the crypto.com arena out in LA. They renamed the Staples Center. That is a 20-year deal. That is giant. And I think that really shows kind of that we're at this different point, So I think a lot of people in crypto sort of, they remember 2017 and they see us in another bull run and people are hesitant. They're wondering if we're in the same space. I think that's a very clear indicator that we're not, and we're past it. And, as much as it feels kind of almost cliche to say, it's different this time. And I think that's a very big signifier of it. Another one, which I think really stands out, is also within the last few weeks, Jimmy Fallon and Post Malone both did major deals to acquire a Bored Ape, which was facilitated by MoonPay. And I think those were huge signifiers of where we are in this space and where this space is going. Because I think, I come from the influencer marketing space, right? So that's one of the things which I've been doing for a while. It's sort of my role over at Melt. And with that, and seeing then the onboarding of influencers and the adoption of NFTs by celebrities, that's a really big cosign for Web3 and for the NFT market. So those really jumped out at me as like big moments in time that I think we're all going to remember.
So say somebody's at home still and they've actually never like dipped their toes into any crypto. Dogecoin was what piqued their interest first, for instance. And then this NFT thing really, maintains itself after exploding onto the pop culture radar. How do they go about getting involved in NFTs?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a super interesting topic. And I love how you started with Dogecoin because, Dogecoin started as a meme coin, right? But like memes are culture. And I think that's a big aspect of this. And that's where a lot of the NFT stuff's going as well, is people are going to be able to own their content. So that's a piece that I think is going to be particularly interesting for advertisers. But yeah, let's get into, super new, absolutely green. You've never really even bought an NFT before. Like, all right, like I think the biggest piece is, what is your role going to be in the industry? Figure that out, do some research, decide, are you going to be, an NFT artist and you're one that's putting out new content that gets minted on the blockchain regularly and you build an identity as a creator? Are you an NFT collector or trader? Like, are you one that's going to be, shopping for the lowest floor on a project that is going to then go and become a massive success? Or are you looking for things that are kind of low price that you can then flip off really quickly and sort of make massive repeated short-term gains? Or like, where do you see yourself in the industry? Because there's some people, they buy and they invest big in a blue chip and they hold, and that becomes their digital identity. There's other people, they start developing and they put out content and they become known in the space. They build their personal brand as a Web3 creator. And then there's others who they see the opportunity to make a lot of money in the trading space. But instead of trading on analytics and trading on sheer data, they're trading on culture. So, those are kind of the three main roles. So figure out where you want to be. Are you someone who buys and then sells for quick gains, or what of those are you going to be? Then let's say you want to actually get into it. You've picked which role you're going to be, and you want to figure out the basics. First thing you need is a decentralized wallet. So people, like, let's say we're doing Ethereum, because that's kind of the go-to chain for a lot of this stuff. You get yourself a MetaMask, you set that up. You go to a centralized exchange like Coinbase, and there's no clear decentralized way to get into the NFT market right now, because just to onboard fiat currency into cryptocurrency, that requires you to be connected to one of these other wallets. So basically, if you have a hot wallet that's connected to a centralized exchange, you buy in USD or whichever fiat that you use, you then send the Ethereum over to your MetaMask. You can then go and shop for NFTs on the OpenSea marketplace. It's probably one of the biggest ones. Or if you're looking for specific stuff, you can get into the weeds and sort of research the marketplaces of where you want to buy what. A few of my favorites personally are Foundation, which they have a highly curated visual catalog, and then Catalog Works, and they have a highly curated music catalog. So I think both of those really jump out at me. But if you're looking just to explore everything that's in the space, go to OpenSea. It's where everyone shops. It's kind of the go-to at the moment. That's a good way to get into it. A good resource for kind of checking floors and whatnot. You then go, make sure you're aware of rarity tools. You want to know how rare your items are, because you don't want to just be buying things that are, for the sake of it, because they're pretty pictures. Like, this isn't about the JPEGs. It's about the rarity of the assets that you hold. As you said, it's the Cryptographic Asset Show, and you want to make sure that you have a high quality asset. So that's a big deal here, is when you're getting into it, make sure you do some research on what you buy. Everyone says do your own research, but in all seriousness, if you don't look up and determine what the value is going to be long term, what are you getting in addition to just the image, you're going to end up in a position where you don't know if you're getting the best buy if you don't do some of the legwork yourself. So it does take a little bit to make sure that you're making a good decision. But so there's a few different pieces here, and that's definitely how you dip your toe in. And it's a pretty interesting space to be in overall. But yeah, that's the short of it.
What are some of the coolest NFT projects in your opinion? One that comes to mind for me, and I haven't admittedly looked too deeply into NFTs, probably compared to many people, Avagachi is the one that stands out. I mean, this might be controversial, but VeeFriends is another one that seems interesting to me, by Gary Vee. Now, what's cool, I want to go to his conference, right? I want to be able to just to have an NFT and be able to enter his conference, which is the terms. And though it's not worth it to me what some of these VeeFriends are trading for right now in ETH and more, 10 ETH, it would be cool to have one or have gotten in early so that I could attend this conference. So what are some of the coolest NFT projects in your opinion right now?
So yeah, first let's talk about VeeFriends, because I think that one really stands out as well. A lot of people, they look at the NFT space, and some people even get turned off. They're like, oh, people are just buying pictures and flipping them. And it's like, they're just trying to get a quick buck. And, then you hear people talking about, money laundering, which, nobody would ever use an on-chain service to money launder. That's, that's ridiculous. There's more money laundering that happens in fiat currency than could ever even possibly happen in crypto, because it's all on chain. But, so then you see people who are about the pictures and they care about that. And they're like, oh, well, Gary Vee just put out these drawings and now they're going for this insane price. That's not what's happening at all. The VeeFriends is genius. Like you said, it's about the value add you get. So VeeFriends are a non-fungible version of a social token. And the social tokens, I think, is one of my favorite aspects of this whole space. So it's about access. It's not about just owning the asset and, being able to sell it for a higher price, or even I'll get into Bored Apes in a sec, because that's one of my personal favorites. But it's not about just owning the commercial licensing rights, and that's big. But I think there's a big aspect of one, like, what does it get you? You know, because if you're just getting the JPEG, you're buying the wrong thing. And two, so like VFriends, it gets you access to that conference. It gets you access to an exclusive community. It gets you access to a direct chat where Gary Vee is active on a semi-daily basis. So at that point, you're getting something that has real long-term value that is associated with someone's personal brand. So in my mind, it's one of the most interesting projects out there because it's not focused on the art. So that one's very big in my, in my opinion. So I like you brought that up. Another one, everyone's heard of the blue chips. Bored Apes, like everyone who is looked at NFTs, that's probably the first thing they saw in the NFT space is the Bored Ape Yacht Club. I mean, I'd say that it even probably is more well known than CryptoPunks at this point. And what I think is so interesting with Bored Ape Yacht Club is you get the commercial licensing rights to your ape. Me, I'm all about IP and being able to leverage IP. I'm sure you saw UMG is releasing a new band called Kinship, made of 4 apes. They licensed out the IP to that. Jenkins the Valet has been signed to CAA. It's another ape that turned the ape into a custom brand. And now that's a virtual influencer now. So that ape has become more than just an image. It has actually developed its own digital identity. And that identity is the standalone asset separate from the owner or the creators. So, there's no current affiliation with Yuga and Jenkins, apart from the fact that Yuga Labs created the apes. But so in my mind, the fact that you get licensing rights, that's an extremely big piece. And I would actually look for collections that offer that because, as you said, cryptographic asset show, that makes it into a real asset. You can then leverage that and monetize that 100 times more than you could make by just buying something and flipping it. So that's something which I think makes the Bored Apes stand out a lot. Then one thing which I thought was really thought-provoking and which kind of grabbed my mind, we see a lot happening in the gaming space. And I'll preface by saying I'm not a gamer. I work with esports players and I've done stuff in the gaming space, but I don't personally game. So this one kind of caught me by surprise with how effective and how successful it was. And that's Neo Tokyo. Neo Tokyo they soared. And I mean, part of that is the affiliation with, crypto influencers like Alex Becker and, the association with like Elliott Trades and people wanting to be part of their exclusive community. So that goes back similarly to the value that was provided by VFriends, but for a different niche. But then the other aspect which I thought was so thought-provoking is this is a collection that launched without art. They launched the Neo Tokyo identities and it was pure code. And there was no art affiliated with the project at that given point in time. So I think that puts a lot of trust on the creators to fulfill their roadmap. So I think long-term, the play to earn space is really revolutionizing the way that gaming works. We see a lot of people talking about the metaverse and, a lot of the metaverse stuff actually stems from the gaming world because a lot of these games kind of had that open world effect and stuff like that. And, we see like play to earn being a really big concept because there's a lot of value to be created in this space by being active and just being engaged is one of the biggest things for Web3. So if you're in a community that's focused around the games and you're focused around the value, that's a big piece. So then, going back to Neo Tokyo, they come naturally from the gaming world. The two guys I mentioned, Elliott Trades and Alex Becker, they are gaming native. They are esports centric guys. So this is really authentic to them. And then if you also look at what they're doing with that, it becomes a really interesting thing to watch because it's about the long-term roadmap. So that's one thing I'd say is vital. If you're looking into the NFTs, don't just look at the art. I mean, don't buy things that are ugly, of course, because if you have something that you can't leverage in any way, then it's not an asset. But I also say when you buy it, look at the roadmap because the roadmap will help you define whether or not it's a good buy or not, and whether or not it's an asset you can leverage. Whether it's getting you access to a community. And, that's one of the things with like Bored Apes, for instance, like there's a few things, everybody wants to be part of a community, but everybody wants their community to be more valuable than everybody else's. So when you look at that, that's a really big piece of it. So at this point, if you look at the floor of the Bored Apes, it's now more expensive than a membership to one of the nicest country clubs in America. So, I put out a poll on my LinkedIn. It's like, what would you rather have at this point? A blue chip NFT or a country club membership for the year? And at this point, like, more people are actually starting to gravitate towards the blue chip NFT. And it's interesting to see because people want to be part of this elite high status community. They want to be associated with the names that are part of that community. They want to have access to the events. They want to have access to the people. And, so that's a really big piece is what does it represent? It's not just, oh, I'm going to be part of this thing, because all of them, I mean, there's only so many communities that can form this nature, right? But then there's also the status symbol. I mean, let's be honest. If you see, like, one of the most popular places to talk about cryptocurrency is on Twitter. And if you go to crypto Twitter and you see someone with a Bored Ape making a comment on something, you're going to take their opinion a little bit more seriously than you are someone with an NFT you've never seen before, because there's status associated with that collection. So status and community kind of go hand in hand. There's an inclusivity factor, which is tied to community, and there's an exclusivity factor, which is tied to status, because the assets are finite. So that's a really big piece of it that I think really jumps out. So those are some of the things I think kind of make those three collections sort of pop, all sort of similar value adds, but with different contextualizations and different niches.
One of the things that pops out to me about Aavegotchi is that it has a certain functionality. So some of these NFTs that are coming out, the NFT you hold can be yield farming, or it can be also used as a wallet in some cases. Have you seen anything on the functional NFT front that has jumped out at you? Another one that comes to mind for me is like Miners, I think it's called, and it's on OpenSea. And I think it's an NFT that is, they're NFTs that are one of a kind, but also released in a deflationary manner. And I think that they also accrue a second NFT as you hold them. I need to look more into that, but tell me about functional NFTs.
Yeah, so I love the whole functional NFT space. I think there's a lot of value out here, kind of tying in functional NFTs to some of the advertising stuff, for instance. I think if you're buying NFTs of land, either in Sandbox or in Decentraland, that's a big functional NFT because you can leverage the land in several different ways. I think it's going to restart the out-of-home advertising space, but in a digital context. Because if we're actually moving towards the metaverse and that's what's coming next, then having finite amounts of land within that metaverse is going to be extremely valuable. So to me, that's a huge functional value add. I know it's a slight tangent, but to me, that's a big one. Then you mentioned ones that provide value back to the holders. So that's huge as well. The Aavegotchi mentioned was great. Similar collections that are doing something like that. And I want to declare, I'm not trying to pump my bags or anything. I mean, my wallet's publicly accessible for my Twitter. You can see what I hold and I don't hold. So it's not like I'm like out here pumping stuff. But so just in terms of collections, I think are particularly interesting. CyberCongs, I think, is great. They've done a great job of giving value to people through them being able to earn bananas and the value with that, and then being able to sell off in that nature. Personally, I do, full disclosure, I am a holder in this project. Angry Boars, I think they did a great job with the way they did theirs. So Angry Boars have basically a secondary NFT, like what you mentioned. So if you own an Angry Boars, you got a Just Pay Gas Angry Meerkat. And so that can be pretty advantageous. And then if you own a Meerkat, then you get access to their utility token, the OINK token. And what I think is so interesting about these utility tokens is, all right, yeah, they're not technically being sold on exchanges at that moment for instant liquidity. But instead what they are is, and this goes back to the whole gaming concept. I'm sure everybody who's played video games before is familiar with the concept of in-game tokens. So this sort of works in the same manner. You can use these in the NFT exclusive shops and you can get things, So for instance, one of the things which the Angry Boars Enterprise has sort of announced they're doing is if you have the OINK token, they're going to have live events, which you'll then be able to access and buy tickets to. They also have elixirs to upgrade your boards coming out. And if you do that, it's the equivalent of mutating one of your apes with the Bored Ape Yacht Club collection. So you can buy those using their utility token. So I think things that are setting up their own ecosystem, to me, really jump out. And that's a big one in terms of functionality, things with utility tokens. And then I think the digital land space, that's big. So those are two really big categories of functional NFTs to me. And, I think also things that are redeemable for experiences, those are going to be big, so in the influencer NFT space, that's a big one. I'm working on that now over at Blockperks, and that's actually what the perks are in Blockperks. So it's about giving the holder something of use and something they can do something with. So, I mean, if we look at, for instance, going back to VFriends, you get to redeem a personal one-on-one, either video chat or play tennis or whatever it is with Gary Vaynerchuk. That's a pretty big advantage to holding one of those. Then it's becoming a really big thing. One that I saw that really stood out to me in terms of functional NFTs is maybe you're familiar with the NFT influencer Fungibles, and he just goes by that pseudonym. But he had this $10,000 NFT. It was just a picture of his dinner. And one thing that I thought really stood out is he was selling this NFT of his dinner on the DeSo blockchain, with the value add in that NFT being you could redeem it for a one weekend experience with him, where he would pick you up in a Lamborghini. He would take you to all his favorite nightclubs. And while he's pseudonymous, he's made it clear that he is an entity within the music space that is pretty well known. So it's basically hanging out with the celebrity in their Lambo, going to these parties, getting exclusive backstage access to stuff, and then getting access to, he has this course where he teaches you about how he's made money in the space and about his marketing strategies and things of that nature. So to me, I think that one was a huge value add for 10K. And to see it being sold on a social blockchain like DeSo, which stands for decentralized social, that really stood out in my mind. So I think there's a lot of different ways to add value and a lot of different functional tokens. For instance, I got one that told me full engagement analytics, and I could redeem it for all my stats of my social account. And I think that's another one that I think is really interesting in terms of use case, because it's a code-based NFT. So it basically auto-redeemed once it was purchased. And I think those are some of the, a lot of the different value adds that come from the whole functional NFT space.
If there's like a CMO at a Fortune 500 company that came to you and asked them, like, how could they incorporate NFTs into their marketing and communications, what might you say to them?
Well, I certainly wouldn't tell them just to release an NFT of a picture of their brand or something like that. I've seen a few collections like that where they just have an NFT that doesn't have a use case, that is playing off pre-created art. And to me, that's definitely not the route to go. So yeah, if we're speaking to a Fortune 500 CMO, I think that NFTs are going to be a really big value add. I think they need to look at the functional space and look at what function and what value can I create for my buyer and what's authentic to us. So I look at, their market and the specific space there. Which direction are they going in? Are they trying to play off hype and FOMO? Is it about building the brand community and getting access to a limited thing? Which, to be honest, that's the route I think most should go. I think most should focus on this idea of 1,000 true fans. So I'm sure, people can look up that article. That one really stood out for where a lot of this stuff is coming from. And, that's kind of where I think a lot of them need to put their mind at, is how can I give my customer the opportunity to pay more? Because the fact of the matter is, this is just an extension of the good, better, best marketing strategy. And if you look at that, this is just, all right, we have good, that's a standard product. We have better, which is like an additional value add. And like, maybe it's something like, if it's a luxury business and there's physical NFTs with a redeemable product, okay, great. Then you can kind of stop there, because that's both better and best in one. But then I think if you're looking, all right, what can I really do? I think they should be looking at long-term value. So I think you're looking to build a community here. You're going to release NFTs in a staggered method. So you'll do an initial generative drop, roughly 5,000 to 10,000, depending on where your head's at and how big, you think the community is. And you build that community, they get exclusive access with exclusive rewards. And, sometimes that's events, sometimes that's airdrops of other things. And, sometimes it's like a redo of the subscription model. So I think, because there's so many different ways to leverage NFTs. And I think that a lot of people aren't thinking about it that clearly. Because, I think even the subscription idea that basically them holding an NFT is then staking their value in your brand. Because the second they sell off and they no longer, instead of canceling a subscription, you have to go find a new customer. Your customer is now an evangelist for your business and is a marketer. So the customer and the marketer become the same person. And that's an extremely valuable thing for the Fortune 500s because it vastly reduces acquisition costs. So I think look at your subscription models and see how can we pivot those, and then look at how can you build a loyal fan base following the idea of the 1,000 true fans. And just while we're on the whole topic of a Fortune 500 and the direction that this goes, because I know that for a lot of marketers, it feels like, all right, a lot of this NFT stuff feels like it's almost a buzzword, it's new, it's happening fast, that kind of thing. They're not sure whether or not it's going to last. I'd look at Seth Godin's book, Tribes. He almost predicted this type of stuff. Basically, he laid out the idea that businesses need to be focused on movements. And when you have a movement, you then create a product that helps fulfill the needs of that movement and that caters to the members of that movement, because that will help you then build a community. So it goes really movement, product, community. And those are really the order there. So if you're wondering what to do as a Fortune 500, I'd look there. There's a movement happening right now. There is a few different underlying ideologies. And I think it's worth considering how can you play off those. So that's a big one in my mind, is the starting of the movements and the building the tribes.
How about for a musician? How can they use NFTs to further their music or even bankroll their music up front?
Oh, this one's fun. So we're actually working on this right now over at Melt. So there's a few different categories to go into here. So you can go basically use NFTs as the non-fungible version of MP3s and the old model that iTunes used to follow, where you sell a low-priced version of your asset and a lot of copies, and you sell out as many as you can in traditional playable form, and then your buyer gets access. And it's cool because it's a pay-for-access model that basically undoes the huge issues that streaming caused. So that's a really simple way to get into it, but that's not the best way to leverage it in my mind. So, we talked about 1,000 true fans for brands. The same holds true for music artists. Your customer will pay more if you simply give them the opportunity to. And that's a big piece of this. So I think if you create a valuable package and something which they can get that shows that they're a fan that went above and beyond the average fan that goes and listens to your music, or even the fan that would go and pay for your music, I think then you're creating something which is a real long-term value add. You have a personal brand. That is an asset. We live in the attention economy. Leverage the asset and leverage your attention to drive real sales and drive the loyalty. Because, the reason people are so frustrated with current social media is because it's a parasocial relationship. And I think you want to turn that parasocial relationship into a direct social relationship. So you give them two-way access to you. The access piece is big because they idolize you. They want access to you. That's a big piece of this. So if you're like, hey, you can be in a direct group chat with me where I will answer your messages, one-on-one on a regular basis, that's huge. Or, hey, this is the only way to get access to an exclusive meet and greet with me. You can then pick my mind and, take pictures with me and do all this fun stuff. That's a huge piece of it too. Then the other model, which I think is extremely interesting to go down, and this gets a little technical because you're not going into the fan base anymore. You're not catering to them. You're catering back towards the other people in the music industry. And that is selling licensing rights or selling royalties. So you can allocate a % of royalties using things like DiscoKid and basically give the holder of that asset a percent of partial ownership and dividends. So, we talked about collections like CyberCon, which goes back to paying out the holders. This is a way of doing that based on your music. So you can fractionalize a percentage of your royalties from a specific song or specific album, and then sell that back to your community. So people can own one thousandth of your song and the royalties that come from that, and they can earn derivatives on that on a monthly basis. And for this, I wouldn't sell that at a flat fee. I'd sell that auction style. And then people will bid up to see how much are people willing to pay for that fraction of your song up front. You gain instant liquidity from that coming out. And then you earn, because it's not like you're selling off all the royalties, but you sell off a percentage. So you're still earning, and you now have enough money to market with and to actually execute a tour or a campaign or what have you, using the money you earned from the upfront sale. And now your audience gets a sense of ownership and gets paid out in perpetuity from buying into it. So that's a huge thing, which it bridges the gap between artist and fan. They become mutual benefactors of the music. So all of a sudden incentives are aligned much more clearly than they would be in other models. So I think you can build that loyalty, you can build the community using the 1,000 True Fans model. You can sell access to the music and kind of just revert back to the old MP3 model, and that works. That's a great way to drive initial fast sales. Or you can take this royalties method and you can really build a strong, loyal community that almost feels like they're connected with you because you have mutual ownership. It almost stems from the DAO model, which I think is a particularly interesting direction to go in with music.
What is the DAO model for those musicians who might not be familiar with it?
Sure. Yeah. So DAOs are decentralized autonomous organizations, and they're very similar to the way startups work. But basically, the idea is that it's liquid ownership. So instead of having a CEO who runs everything, there's more like a few people who have a larger amount of tokens than other people would. So the artist, for instance, will want to keep the majority of their tokens, but then they have other people who partake and they get tokens for doing certain tasks or for partaking in certain methods. So if you partake in this way, like your fans then get mutual ownership. So it aligns the incentive between the user and the creator. And that's a really big thing for music, particularly because all of a sudden your fans feel like they're with you on your journey. They're helping you market. They're helping you endorse your music and get it to more audiences. They're helping drive up sales. So they become part of what you're doing in the music space through that music DAO. And that's one thing, a good example of this would be Pharrell's new DAO. He just released one. I think it's called CXIP. And it's particularly interesting in that sense that they're focused on making sure that creators are able to maintain ownership and their fans are able to partake in the journey as well. And it sort of eradicates the whole previous predatory model that a lot of record labels used to follow. So that's one piece I think is particularly unique about DAOs in the music space.
I almost want to go down that path of the old model for music and really art and media in general. But I guess I want to ask, does everything you say apply to other artists, other types of art, or are there perhaps like unique traits for like a painter or an author compared to music?
Sure. Yeah. So there's most of what I've shared pretty much applies to all mediums of art. And that's one thing I think is extremely beneficial in this sense. But in the music space, particularly because there is sync licensing and royalties, there's a few more monetization models that can be leveraged and that can be then redistributed back to your audience. And, it's a great incentivization structure. So I think for music, that's pretty unique there. In terms of visual art, for instance, there are more traditional ways of monetizing there. And that's actually what most people are used to seeing in the NFT space right now. It's capitalizing off culture and it's visual depictions of that. So that's one of the things I think is big, is you see a lot of that. And it's a big piece of that in general is just consistency. because there is so much out there. The space is feeling very saturated right now. So I would kind of just focus on that and see what you can do to break out and be different, because one of one NFTs are going to be really big in this space. We've seen a lot of these generative drops, and the generatives are fine. They're super cool even. And I own a few generatives, but at the same time, I think the way that people are going to stand out is with the stuff that makes them stand out in the current physical art world. So for instance, we're partners with Cosmic. So Blockperks is partnered with Cosmic Wire. Cosmic Wire just recently did the physical Banksy auction. And basically that was a one-of-one Banksy, and they're doing a lot of stuff in that sense. The auction model is particularly unique because it's tokenizing the actual assets. So art and traditional collectibles are currently assets right now, and it's simply minting them and verifying them on a blockchain, which I think that's a whole unique category specific to physical art that doesn't apply to some of the rest. In terms of visuals, I think, you've seen a lot of people in this space like Beanie Maxi and Gary Vee himself talk about photography potentially popping off and the opportunities there. So there are different niches within the space, but a lot of the macro trends sort of find themselves being true to every medium of art and even every medium of collectible.
What is phygital? So from my estimation, like the way I see NFTs evolving, or at least an offshoot of NFTs, will be in this quote phygital realm, where the NFT acts as a certificate of authenticity for a piece of artwork, for instance. So like I'm working with Jerome Baker Designs right now, and I don't know if I'm even supposed to say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway, because I know he probably doesn't care that much. They're looking at doing a NFT bong. So he wants to make a really high-end bong, and he wants to create a certificate of authenticity in NFT form to go along with the bong. So that's an example of what might be phygital. So can you explain what is phygital and how do you think it might revolutionize society?
Yeah, so I love you got into this because one thing I am super bullish on this whole concept. So the future is phygital, especially we look at people talking about the metaverse and whatnot. The metaverse is not going to be a fully immersive VR experience. It's going to be where your physical life and your digital life are directly connected. So that's basically what phygital is. It's where the physical world and the digital world collide, and the mutual benefits of them being intertwined. And so for instance, you talked about the NFT space and the aspect there of the physical assets then being digitized, and the benefits of being able to track all these physical assets on chain. That's a huge phygital advantage that you wouldn't have prior, because people used to not be able to have their physical assets be tracked online. And then people used to have their digital assets be set to one realm or one space because it was on a privately owned database. So things being on chain, that makes digitalization much easier to acquire, much easier to develop. Then talking about that specifically, if we look at digital land and the assets there, I think you're going to see a lot of that sort of thing and the benefits with that. So basically, that's not going to be a fully digital experience. You're going to have physical interactions there. We're already seeing people developing experiential aspects where you can feel things that happen within the metaverse. That's going to be really big in that regard. Then going back into like the NFT space and things of that nature, you're going to see a lot of this whole phygital thing in terms of social tokens and experiences. So for instance, this summer, I helped run a company called Hyped, and Hyped was basically this physical and digital event company that was based on the DSO blockchain. And when people would buy into the social token or would buy one of the NFTs we released, that would then get them access to an event. You had to own a certain amount of the social token or you had to own a specific NFT that could then redeem you to get access to this. So that's a big piece too. Then I'm sure you've heard of proof of attendance protocols, and the proof of attendance protocols, those are extremely big because it's a verification that you are actually there. And for physical events, that's going to be huge because it's effectively a way of like proving that you were part of an experience. And, experiences help build people's identities. So if you look at when we were younger, people used to collect their ticket stubs, and they used to like stick them on a cork board about their desk. And, people used to have stickers from events they would go to, or, stores they would shop at, and things of that nature. There would be a physical remnant of that experience, which is now happened in a certain time. Now you're going to have a digital remnant, which is publicly viewable. So the only people who used to know about that, it used to be something you collected for you and which you would show to your friends. Now everyone gets to know what you attended and what you did. And it goes back to this idea of status. So it's like, status and community go together. So if you were at a major event, this is your way of showing the world, hey, I went to this event, which now is a moment in time and now is a marker of history. So I was part of this and that matters. And, here's my proof of being there. Then the other aspect is, hey, like we went to the same event. We were both at like, the Super Bowl 30 years ago, and I could see that on your digital wallet. Like, no way. So it broadens the connection. Like, we go deeper into the relationship between humans because people want people they can relate to, so a lot like four of the big things would be like, aspirational, credible, relatable, and then inspirational. And, if we look at those, like people want things that kind of, they bridge those gaps between people. And, I'd say the other one would really be authentic, so it adds a layer of authenticity because all of a sudden it's all provable in the blockchain. There's no bullshitting anymore. So people's not like, oh, like I was there, and people used to tell their stories and like, that's all well and good. But now it's like, I can pull out my phone and be like, hey, look, here's my token I got from attending, like CloutCon 2020 and, or Ape Fest. And this is my way of showing I was really at this event and that I really was a member of this community. And I think that's really a big layer of digitalization is you get this digital permanent identification factor that is then linked to a physical experience. And whether it be, the initial thing you buy in that redeems, it is redeemable and allows you access, or whether it's an after the fact proof of attendance protocol that is then airdropped to you as a way of saying thank you for being part of this. So I think that's a really big factor is the whole digital experience. It connects people through events and, it basically links space and time in a digital way that previously was not capable of being done in the exclusively physical world.
That's fascinating. Rhett, you are a well of information on the NFT space, and I want to keep picking your brain here as we come to the last 10 minutes. There's lots to talk about, and I guess, I'm going to take us to Dogecoin because that seemed to be a topic that you really liked that I brought up. So I'm going to tell you real quick and as quick as I can, my thesis on what happened with Elon Musk and Dogecoin. So whereas a lot of people are postulating that Elon Musk was making a joke with all this Dogecoin stuff, and mostly it was just that, nothing more than a joke. I think that there was a deeper logic there. I think that whereas Bitcoin has Satoshi Nakamoto, Ethereum has Vitalik Buterin, there was a power vacuum in Dogecoin, and Elon essentially inserted himself as the de facto leader of Dogecoin. I think when people think of Dogecoin now, they're going to increasingly associate it with Elon Musk. Elon Musk also started a relationship with the developer community at Dogecoin and says he's been in contact with them. And I wonder what that could lead to, perhaps even smart contracting functionality on Dogecoin. So what are your thoughts on Dogecoin in general, meme coins, or even Elon Musk?
Sure. Yeah. So lots to unpack here and a lot of fun. So I'll start with the broader concept of meme coins and then kind of get into the specifics of Doge and then Elon's relationship with Doge. So meme coins in general, I think, are particularly interesting. A lot of people don't like meme coins. They're like, oh, it's a pump and dump. There's no real use case, that, the other thing. And, that's all well and good. But at the same time, like if you look at what's behind memes, memes are the modern day version of a visual social commentary that is fast and it's funny. And it's a great way of communicating to people what your thoughts are on an issue in a light way. So, because it's a social commentary, memes are culture. And, it's almost weird to wrap your head around that concept initially, because you're like, all right, it's just a meme, like it doesn't mean anything. It means everything. I mean, so like if you look at, for instance, the GM coin, or GM, that's a movement in the NFT space. It's everybody saying good morning to each other, and it's effectively a signifier that we're all starting our work in this Web3 space together, and we're all like, these are our colleagues and our coworkers. It's the modern day version of going and having water cooler talk. So sure, it seems like, all right, it's just a coin named after a symbol within the space, but at the same time, that symbol holds a lot of value to people. And now there's a monetary way of saying you identify with that value that holds to this community. So to me, that's a really big deal. Then similarly, like let's get into Doge specifically. Like, Doge started as a joke. It was a social commentary, initially meant to kind of rag on the space. And now it's become a key symbol of the space. It's a key identifier of being part of a larger movement, because there's roughly two different political ideologies that sort of are within this whole cryptocurrency NFT space. You kind of have like the idealistic left, and then the purist decentralization libertarians, right? So but they've all kind of come together and like set apart, like whatever nuances they have, for this idea of like, we can change the world here. And that's sort of a very inspiring thing, so, and it's funny because people are self-proclaimed degens, like and for people who don't know, degen is basically a short version of the word degenerate. So people have turned the word degenerate into like a positive, almost fun thing to be associated with. And now, like, the Dogecoin, which was meant to be a burn, has now been like adopted and accepted by the crypto community. And I think that's a really interesting aspect of it. So I think Doge is here to stay. I think, memes define culture and culture defines the market, and Dogecoin's the original meme coin. So I don't think it's going anywhere. I think that it's smart for Elon to associate himself. I think you're absolutely right about him realizing there was a power vacuum because the guy who created it basically abandoned it. And then I think the other aspect of that is he's sort of been known, like Elon Musk is a personal brand that is deeply entrenched in being sort of this, rebel with a cause type guy and being anti-establishment. And to him, Dogecoin was the most anti-establishment thing there was, because it wasn't traditional crypto establishment. So he's not a Bitcoin maxi like Jack, for instance. And, he is very much into this idea of being for the people. And in that regard, he views Dogecoin as being the people's coin, because there isn't a clear leader. And sure, he's inserted himself, he's kind of taken that role unofficially. But because he's taken that role unofficially, it gives him some leeway to be like, hey, like this is for everybody. And this is a concept that people can rally around, rather than it being like, oh, there's someone who like defined the code, like who's in charge of this blockchain, because let's be honest, Satoshi Nakamoto is almost worshipped like a god. And, to people who are Bitcoin maxis, especially, like his view of the world, like he is the gold standard of Bitcoin, because he has that one wallet which has just been untouched for so long. Like to them he's a hero. And I think to all of crypto he's some form of hero, but like especially to the Bitcoin maximalists. And then with Dogecoin, I think it's almost like a Batman style role that Elon Musk type kind of plays. So if you look at it, he's not saying I'm in charge of this or I run this or, this works because of me. He's saying this is for you. He's like, you believe, like, if you believe in me, you believe in you. And if you believe in this, you believe in you. So it's not buy this to pump my bags or buy this because you believe in what I'm doing. It's buy this because it's a signifier of freedom. It's a freedom from, both the traditional crypto rules and the unofficial sort of stiffness. Because let's be honest, over 10 years, crypto's kind of developed its own kind of rules. As much as it's decentralized, there's a few key people who, keep on telling people what they should and shouldn't invest in, and, what type of value they should have. And because everybody tries to set the rules, because decentralization sort of means no man's land. And I think Dogecoin's a rebellion against that, as well as a rebellion against the traditional financial system. So it's not the same as being like, oh, I'm into Bitcoin. And it's not the same as being like, oh, I reject crypto. It's in its own category over here saying, hey, like, this is what we're doing. We're having fun with it. Like, nobody really cares what happens right now. Like, we're all just kind of looking for a moonshot. And if we can get there, like, fantastic. And I think that's sort of his role in it. He's helping be a catalyst for that. I think that Doge is going to be a long-term play because of it. And, I'm bullish.
Which platforms do you think are going to be viable for NFTs moving forward? There's Ethereum and Ethereum with Polygon. Then there's Wax. There's the Flow blockchain. There's Stacks now on the Bitcoin blockchain, which I think is an interesting topic.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I got to be honest, I must do more research on Stacks because, this layer, like, it's almost its own version of a layer 2. It's really interesting what they've done with it because they've found a way to create yield on Bitcoin in a way that was not previously possible. So that's very interesting in that regard. But then going into all the platforms, what's going to be sustainable for NFTs in the future? All of them. Absolutely. And I know it's like, okay, Ethereum's got this crazy high gas fee. Like, it's, it's annoying, then Solana, like, there's a centralization risk there because they can technically turn it on or off and things of that nature. But if we're looking at it, the future's cross-chain. Every single one of these is a different use case. Flow is esports and gaming, and that's kind of their big focus. And that's exactly what they should be. They cornered that market. They've arguably already won most of that market share. But much like there's no monopolies in traditional markets, there's not going to be monopolies on blockchains either. So, you're seeing people build everywhere. And, I think Solana's super cheap and super fast. It's a great way to enter the NFT space because it's low price and, low entry makes it easy. But then, of course, lower barrier to entry means there's going to be more shit on the blockchain because there's more room for people to get in and put out dumb stuff. Which is why you've seen more rug pulls on Solana than on Ethereum, because the cost to enter Ethereum is pretty high. Then in, the opposite fashion, it's like, all right, Ethereum's high, the gas is kind of, high up there, and like transactions are slower than, Solana and things of that nature. Okay, like, I think that may be true for now, but like you said, there's layer 2s happening all around. Like, Arbitrum was just adopted by Reddit. TikTok partnered with Immutable X. Like, so layer 2s are going to be big. Polygon's definitely the biggest one right now. But then also, as soon as Ethereum layer 2, Ethereum 2 pops out, the layer 2s aren't going to be that significant. They're going to have their own niches. I think that you'll see Immutable X being focused on that kind of influencer and kind of that social aspect for Ethereum. I think that DeSo is going to be exclusively for social because it doesn't have smart contracts, but it's about connecting with people. So it's a different type of NFT. So I think when you look at what's going to live where, look at the use cases and then look at the structures, because I think Ethereum is where all the blue chips live, and it's always going to be where all the blue chips live because it's been around much longer and it's the most established. It's effectively like it's the old guard of NFTs. So that's what I think is going to be so interesting with that one. Then I think you look at newer stuff or cheaper stuff. that's the best way to enter for people who are newer to the space, because it's just cheaper and there's less to lose, less risk. Then I think, okay, like we look at other things, people are niching down left and right. Arbitrum has their deal with Reddit. I think that's going to be a big deal for them. I think that NFTs and things of that nature in that sort of space are going to be big as well. Because personally, I come from the image marketing world. I think that the social side of all of this is very interesting. But then I think in conclusion, like with that, all of it's really going to be cross-chain, and it's going to be different focuses for different niches. So different chains are going to, basically have different funds for who can build what and targeting different audiences. I mean, like Alexis Ohanian, he put out that he's looking for who's going to build the social platform on Solana. So like they're all going to have different reasons to exist, and they're going to serve different purposes, because it's one blockchain cannot meet all the needs that people want and all the things that are going to be beneficial to people in NFTs. This idea of the non-fungible token is a very unique and innovative use case. So it's going to be a technology. It's going to be around for a long time. I think it really is what marked the entry into Web3. And that's where I think a lot of this defining what each blockchain is for is going to come from, is what kind of NFTs do they serve?
We've had the honor and privilege of sitting down today with Rhett Ullman. He is the CMO of Melt Music and Media Agency, and he's also the co-founder of Blockperks. Thank you so much, Rhett, for joining us today.
Thank you, Justin. Thrilled to be on the Cryptographic Asset Show with you. Pleasure.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a great day.